So I just spoke about my experience, and I said, like I said, I have been in the grant world for a while, specializing in nonprofit formation, grant research, grant writing, board development, and back-end processes. I have founded at least 2 nonprofit organizations plus 1 consulting business, which is where I do the training of grant writing and also integrating immigrants into the U.S., helping integrate immigrant professionals into the U.S. So let's see if okay, so as far as education is concerned, I went to college in the United Kingdom as well as here, where I received in the United Kingdom a Bachelor of Science in Information Management, and then here in the US, a Bachelor of Science in Human Services in Massachusetts, and then I have a graduate certificate from SUNY University of Albany on nonprofit management and leadership, and then from Florida University of South Florida, I got the certificate of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. So now that we have an idea of who I am, today my hope is that by the end of this session, you will understand what grants are, what the process or how the grant process works, how to apply effectively, and to also understand what are the key elements of a grant application. And then I'm going to introduce, I didn't talk about this last time, but I want to bring it in because that's the world we are in now, the role of AI, artificial intelligence, in grant writing. So what is a grant? Can I have some charts in here? Or you can speak it out, just unmute yourself and let me hear. What do you think a grant is?
Donation from any organization.
A donation from any organization.
Yeah, to support a certain project.
I beg your pardon?
In a specific specialty to help others.
Okay. Thank you,
Ms. A grant is an amount of money which is put over from one organization to another in the way of USAID or the EU Commission to fund projects which may meet certain conditions underneath international agreements or are put there to support NGOs in specific operations.
Yes, you definitely got. So yeah, so a grant, as you said, is I believe it was John, that it is funding that is provided to support a project or a cause without the expectation of paying it back. I know that sometimes people say it's free money. It's really not free money. It's based on trust that you will deliver the results, that your project and your project must align with the funder's goals and missions. So while we may say it's money that is not paid back, I will explain on that in a minute. But it's given to either an individual or an entity. It is it funds an idea or a project, and it is conditional, and it does have some strings attached. In other words, they are giving you the money for this, and you have to provide that, right? You have to provide that particular thing that they are giving you that money for. Here's what it is not. It is not free money, no obligation money. There is some obligation that comes with it. It is not for your backyard upgrades, for example, right? Or it is not for startup funds. for nonprofits. It does not, there are no grants that are out there that, maybe there's one grant that I know of, very minimum. I think they give up to $500 for women who want to start a project. So they give you to start a project, not to actually start a nonprofit. Okay, yeah, that's true. They give you, it's called a joy grant. It does not, it gives you money for a project, even if it's for the first time that you're doing it. They don't necessarily fund the expenses for starting a nonprofit. So when I say that it is that money does not need, is money that does not need to be paid off, there are exceptions. We do have grants that are for college students, for example. So a student can get a grant, but if they don't meet the goals, if they don't meet the grade level that they're supposed to be meeting in school, they don't meet the parameters of why that grant was given to them, sometimes they are asked to pay back. So it's not always free money. So where do grants come from? Where do grants come from? So there are different types, sources of funding. SBA, which is the Small Businesses Authority. This is usually where for small businesses would be able to get these funds. So if you look at all the SBAs that are on the screen, they are really for small businesses. So we are not going to talk about that because I sometimes use the same slide for when I'm talking to businesses. So our concern is mostly on the other side, where we are talking about the government, the private foundations, the corporate responsibility, social responsibility funding, as well as other organizations. So government, as we know, USAID is one of them, and private foundations like the Bill Gates Foundation, for example. The government, you also have NIH, and private foundations include the Bill Gates Foundation, for example. You include the Ford Foundation, and then corporate responsibility, corporate social responsibility are usually companies that are within your community. Right, so either they are serving in your community or they are based in your community, and they want to partner with your entity in their effort of showing social responsibility. So they would fund as part of your organization for a specific project, or they would tag on to one of your projects that you're already doing. Sometimes they would encourage you to start a particular project that they will fund, and their staff would come to volunteer to it, and you'll be collaborating on that, on it. And then there are organizations, the type of organizations, for example, Rotary. Rotary also is an organization that gives funding. It gives funding, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes rather. So there are types of organizations, types of grants. They are restricted grants. Okay, let me stop this for a minute. It's going too fast. Okay, so we have restricted grants and unrestricted grants. So we have program grants that you want to start an after-school program, and within that after-school program, you have different activities that you need to do. That is program. So that program project also can fund the staff, particularly staff that are directly linked to the project. And then we have operating grants. These support the cost of doing business, such as salaries, advertising, office expenses, rent, etc., etc. And then you have capacity building grants. These help your organization expand a program, for example, or function more effectively or become more self-sustained. And then we have matching grants. Matching grants, they usually will be contributed up to a certain amount. If you can match that amount through fundraising, an organization will match it as well for you. So so matching grants, when you do a fundraiser, for example, this would be something that will you have an agreement with an entity, with an organization or a foundation or even a company, where you would say, for every dollar that you raise, we are going to give you another dollar. So what the company does is it encourages its staff members to donate, right? So for every dollar that you raise doing your fundraising activities, for every dollar, they will give you $1. So you have double the amount. And then capital grants are funds that you can apply for to acquire land, to acquire buildings, or even remodeling or using equipment. So you can ask for money for equipment under capital grants. And then there is endowment grants. This is money that is received and is restricted. So, for example, somebody wealthy passes away. In their will, they had put this amount on the side to say, I would like 3 million of my money to go into a particular reserve, and I need it to be distributed to organizations that deal with ABC. So that money is put in investment, usually conservative investment, and then it is the interest that is then being distributed to different organizations. So it's managed by somebody, maybe a family member, maybe a company, but people can apply. If you meet the eligibility criteria, you can apply to get some of that money. So, and then startup grants, these fund startup costs for this usually come from any organization or company, or when you want to start an organization or a company, they are what are called startup grants. So, so before I do that, before I go forward, any questions? Okay. So what? Oh, go ahead. Pardon?
Nothing, sorry.
Okay. So the process for applying for a grant it starts from right here. I don't know if you can see my cursor. Where it says identify need and focus. Sometimes people go and find the money and then try to make that money fit what is going on with them. You don't identify the funding first. I know we are used to, let's find the money, and then we do projects that are being funded, which sometimes brings us away from our mission, because we are following the money rather than we identifying our need, identifying our focus, and then looking for money that meets that need or that focus. So you find the need, you identify your need, and then you find your prospective grant. And then in some instances, you develop a general proposal and budget. And in some instances, you are given a step-by-step of this is what you need to do. Sometimes they will ask you to submit a letter. Before you give them a proposal, they ask you to submit a letter of inquiry or a letter of interest. If they have asked for a letter of interest, that's all you should give them. Not a proposal, not a budget. They are just asking, submit your letter of inquiry. hey, this is who we are. We are interested in the funding that you have advertised, and we would like out of that of that money, we are looking for so much money, $500 or $5,000 to do ABCD. That's all they're asking for. And then you have to wait until they respond to you. And in their response, you have two responses, one of two responses. One of them would be, unfortunately, the project that you described does not meet the criteria of what we are looking for. Or the second option would be you would receive a request to formally submit your application. So if you are asked to formally submit your application, then you prepare the specific proposal. You prepare this specific proposal based on what the proposal is asking you to do. So in other words, you must read. One of the things that most people don't do is not read what the funder is asking for and just assume that this is what they are going to do. They just see, they are doing, they are giving wheelchairs, so let me apply for wheelchairs, without actually reading whether you meet the criteria and what it is that you're asking you for. So make sure that you are reading line by line of that whole advertisement of that grant, to make sure you understand it before you start before you start writing your proposal, so that you are specific when you are responding to the proposal. And then you submit the proposal before deadline. All of them, really, all funders out there, they always give you a deadline. And within that deadline, when they tell you the deadline is Tuesday, the 28th of February, 2025, then it's Tuesday, the 28th of February, 2025. Midnight, some of them will tell you by 5 p.m., some of them will tell you by midnight. If you're doing it electronically, which is what we are now doing, which is now has become the way to do things in this arena of technology, most grants are now. A long time before, we used to make copies, make 7 copies. They'll give you instructions, make 7 copies and send this to this person and send this to that person. But now it's all electronic. So if you don't do it by midnight of that Tuesday, guess what? At midnight, that system shuts down automatically. So you have missed the deadline, and there is no sending an email. Sorry, my computer didn't work. I had some technology issues. I didn't have data to send it, and they don't care. They don't have time for that. You should have prepared way in advance. So that's one of their ways also of reducing the number of applications that come in that they have to deal with. So meet that deadline, do it, submit that deadline, submit it a few days before if you can, so that you are not running like a headless chicken on the day off. And then the grantors will review your proposal. Now, whenever you are writing your grant, always write it from an understanding that the people who are reviewing the grants have been hired to just review grants. So sometimes in your writing, you're going to have to include educating them. Maybe it's a cultural thing that you might actually include within your organization to educate the reviewer. Because if the reviewer has never been to Nairobi, for example, if they've never been to Mexico, some nuances they may not understand, right? So include some level of education, of educating that individual, so that when you are telling your story, they understand, they at least have some understanding of where you're coming from. So if there are some cultural aspects that you need to tease out, do that. If they without overbearing in your writing. But it's very important to always remember that the reviewers, chances are, they've never left the borders of America if they are in America. They've never left the borders of Europe if they're in Europe. So it's important to always make sure if you're writing from a different cultural background, if you're writing from a different country, if there are some nuances in the cultural nuances, perhaps that needs to be teased out, make sure you do that so that they have a better understanding and so that they just don't dismiss your grant, your proposal. And then after your grant has been reviewed, it is then you then receive an award letter. This award letter may say, accept, maybe saying we have declined you from this award or from this grant, or we are giving you a grant, we are providing you a grant, this grant for so much amount. Now it's time for you to carry out the project. When you're carrying out the project, while you are carrying it out, make sure that you are putting down your milestones, you are writing some challenges. Whenever challenges come up, you're putting them all down because you're going to need them for reporting. Every grant comes with a reporting element. You must think about reporting from day one. How are we going to provide the reporting? Did the funder give us a form that we need to fill? Did the funder give us some milestones that we need to meet? Or do you need to make them up yourself? And so have all this in mind so that, or some grantors will ask you they want their reports once a month. Some will say quarterly, some will say every 6 months, some will say annually. And some will say we want them quarterly, but the last quarter, we want a more exhaustive report that includes everything from the year. So be mindful of the instruction that they are giving you. Be mindful of the instruction that you're being given. So now that we understand the process, what are some of the elements of the grants that you need to be thinking about? So they have the 5 R's of grant research, of grant writing. Okay, maybe 4, all right. 4 or 5 R's of grant writing. The first one is readiness. Then there's research, relationships, writing, and reporting. Those are the 5 R's of grant writing. 5 R's of grant writing. Now let's go into really quickly, what each of those represent. This usually is a whole class of just talking about these 5 R's, but I'm going to give it to you to give you a quick preview of what it means to be ready. So readiness is talking about your organizational capacity. Measure your organization's capacity to meet the expectations. That's why you must read the instructions. You must read everything that the funder has put out there. Read it so that you see whether your organization has the capacity to meet the expectations. If your organization has the capacity to research, to apply, and to even win and manage the grants effectively. Winning grants is not impossible, but it's not easy. The odds are not always in our favor. Whenever you apply for grants, chances are you are going to receive, out of as many grants you put out there. The more grants you put out there, the more chances you have. So grants out there are usually, the winning of grants is usually 10 to 20%. 10 to 20% of the grants that you put out there. So more grants is better for you. Plan well and ahead. This episodic grant seeking is not going to cut it. For an example, you don't say, we want to start a soccer program for our children. We want to start a soccer program, and all of a sudden you are looking for money. You want to start the soccer program next. You know that the children are going to be off school next month. Now you want to look for grants. That's not going to work. Grants take time. So if you want to start a soccer program, start talking about it now so that you can implement it next year, for example. Give yourself time or plan ahead. And then have a full understanding of all elements of a grant proposal before you begin writing. So don't just jump into writing. What are the elements that this grant proposal is asking, and can I meet each and every one of them? Can I provide information for each and every one of them? So there are two types of readiness. So there is administrative readiness, and then there is programmatic readiness. So what is administrative readiness? Administrative readiness is, number one, are you incorporated? Most organizations, 99.99% of entities, of grantors, are giving grants to organizations that are actually incorporated. Incorporated meaning that you are registered in your country. You don't have to be registered in the US, but you are registered in your country. Whatever the board in your country that registered nonprofit organizations, do you have a certification from there? Are you a 501c3 if you are in the US, or if you are in the US and doing work outside, do you have a 501c3? Do you have a whatever it is in your country, are you registered? Are you a recognized entity that is recognized by your government as an NGO or as a nonprofit? Do you have an invested and diverse board of directors along with key community stakeholders? Who is your team? Who is on your team? So most people struggle with identifying board of directors. It's a whole training of identifying board, making and having your board understand their responsibility. A lot of times, it may not be well received when the executive director is the one who is telling the board what the expectations are. So it's always good to ask a third party to come in and give a training to your board on board expectations. And who are your community stakeholders? Who are some of your community partners? Have you clearly defined your mission statement, or is your mission all over the place? Your mission statement must be concise and easily understood. Demonstrate organizational credibility and competence. How do you do that? By, number one, again, your board. What is the makeup of your board, right? What kind of skill sets do you have in your board? What kind of education of the people in your board, and any other, and in particularly your executive director, your financial person, your CFO, what are their credentials? Because if you can show credentials of the people, there is more likely to be a better competency and credibility. Are you established in your community with both formal and informal partnerships? Formal partnerships, you have gone to an organization that is doing something that is comparable to you, or that is so for example, if you are serving a diabetic community, for example, you are providing services for the diabetic community, and maybe what you are providing is education, and you are encouraging people to get their eyes checked once a year. You're getting, make sure your feet are checked, make sure your HA1C is on point. That's what you are doing. But then the individuals come to you and they say, hey, my doctor is saying I should change my diet, but I really don't have access to food like that, and then you may partner with a local organization to say, hey, you are a food bank, we would like to partner with you so that maybe every Tuesday or whatever day we can agree on, our clients may come to pick up some food from your food bank. that, and then you formalize it, you write that agreement down, and both parties sign it. That's a formal agreement. So, and then are you measuring outcomes and the impact of the outcomes in your community? How is your community being impacted by you being in your community? What kind of measurements have you been done? How are you presenting it to your community, to your board, and to other stakeholders? That's the administrative. Now let's talk about the programmatic readiness. Do you have a strong and sustained program that or programs that are already operating? You may not be applying for what you are applying might be a new program, but do you have other programs that you have done that are successfully running? Right, those who make your case your case much better. Not to say that if you are brand new, they will not give you funding, but it helps when you have, if you can show that I have I do have other programs that we have done. Now, have a concise description of programs or services that includes goals and objectives, activities, and any key outcomes. Since if you are already you've already implemented the program or the service. If you've already done that, you should already have some key outcomes that have come out of it. If it's new, if you're a new organization, it's a new program, you can always do projections. Always do projections. Have strong organization capacity. Who is your executive director? Who is your CFO if you have one? Who is on your board? And who is going to be working on this program? Is the person, if you are going to be providing services to children, do you have a case manager? What are the qualifications of this particular case manager? Maintain reliable data demonstrating a specific need within the community that comes from the last 3 years. So, well, data from 10 years ago might be good for comparative, but when you are asking for grants, you want recent data. When you are presenting data, it needs to be recent. It can be, if you are new, it can be recent based on your community. If you haven't started collecting data yourself, or it could be data that you have collected over the past 3 years, if you've been operating over the past 3 years. Have SMART objectives outlined. Have SMART objectives outlined. And then, readiness also has a thread or component, financial. I forgot about that. Financial component. So readiness has the administrative, and then you have the programmatic, and then you have the financial. A strong financial strategy with appropriate tracking measures it needs to be in place. So you must have your most recent or overall organization budget and individual program budget. So there's a difference. We will talk about that when we talk about budget later on. There is a difference between your organization budget and your individual program budget. So make sure that there's a distinction between those. And then you have an accurate list of past, of current, and pending funding. Pending funding means that you have received that letter. Remember what we talked about in the process. You have received that letter of we are giving you an award. That's pending until you have actually received the funding. So you can include that in your proposal. Do you have adequate internal support when it comes to reporting? Who is doing your reporting for you? Who is putting the reporting together? Who is working with the children, working with people directly, and what are they doing with the data that they are collecting? Are they the ones that are going to write the report, or is the report going to be written by somebody else? And how is that information being transferred to that somebody else? Have a recent tax return. In the US, it's 990. I don't know what it is in your country. If organizations in your country are expected to have tax returns, have them ready. to present. Research, then the second R. You need to research the funder. You need to research the funder. You need to research your project. You need to research your audience. You can't write an effective write a grant proposal without doing research of who your funder is, your project, and your audience. So look at other similar projects to gain insight. Like if you go on to GuideStar, which is now called Candid, or even the IRS will give you an idea of what similar projects are being done by organizations that are similar to you. Research demographic information on your audience. Data always helps create a strong grant proposal. If there is no data available for your particular audience, then you collect it. Take the time to collect it. Take a look to see, is your project being done elsewhere? And what makes your project stand out? Why is your project needed in your community? If there are 5 other organizations in your community that are providing, that have a food pantry, for example, why is your food pantry needed in your community? Why is your food pantry? What makes your food pantry stand out? What makes your food pantry necessary to add on to the 5 that are already operating in your community? Excuse me. How are you uniquely qualified to do this project that you're proposing? Avoid double dipping or duplicating other projects or other organizations' work. There's nothing wrong with learning from other projects, learning from other organizations, but try not to duplicate them or to double dipping, meaning that you are receiving funds for a food pantry from XYZ, and you are receiving money for food for the same program from ABC organization. So it's very important that there is no double dipping happening. Relationships is the third R. Relationships. What previous relationships do you have with the funder, if there are any? Community collaborators. Who are your community collaborators? Do you have strong partnership letters? Because those go a long way. Highlight your organization's capacity using relevant staff qualifications, experiences, and talents. Use budget to demonstrate how you leverage the funds against other resources. Then the fourth R is writing. Yeah, I know it doesn't start with R, but the R is in there somewhere. Writing. Leverage effective storytelling. Remember when I was saying when the reviewer is looking at your grant, you want to tell a story. You want your proposal to tell a story, so that if they are not from your community, by reading your proposal, they are immersed in it. They have a better understanding. You are giving them the lens of them peeking into your community by the way in which you tell your story. So sell your organization, elicit emotions from the person that is going to be reviewing your grant. Back it up with data and admit any weaknesses that this project might have. Proofread. A lot of people start, they don't proofread because for whatever reason, they think, since I've been reading it, if you have been reading, if it's your work, you've been reading it for a while, at some point, even the mistake starts looking like they are correct. That's why it's best to have someone else look at it, have a second or even third opinions, have other people read it, just to check grammar, just to check your spelling, Make sure you are checking your mathematical calculations on your budget. It's very, very important. If your budget does not make sense, it's one of those things that is going to be put aside and not even looked at. And make sure that your budget is aligning with your narrative. Whatever your narrative is must align with your budget and vice versa. Don't embellish, you know. I know life is hard for the orphans that you are serving. I know life is hard for the children who have suffered polio in your community. Life is tough, but don't embellish because reviewers can see through it. Don't embellish your story. It's not worth it. Reporting is the last R. Your reporting, you know, a lot of times people get a little bit antsy about reporting, but reporting is one of those of those tools that you have to showcase your organization, to showcase what it is that you're doing with the funds that you've been given. So there are two types of reports. There's a progress report, and then there's a final report, depending on how long your funding is for. Most times it might be for a year, or it might be a multi-year. Sometimes, so you'll be asked for progress report along the way, and then at the end of your grant, you will be asked for a final report. So what are some of the elements of a report? You have a grant summary, you have milestones, financial statements, project activities, results and the impact of those results, lessons learned, future plans and sustainability, and any other additional information that is requested or that you think is important to include in your report. So what are some of the reporting steps that you want to pay attention to? Understand reporting requirements from the instructions that you've been given. Don't assume, well, I've been reporting for 10 years, different grants, I know what is going on. Each grantor has different expectations. If they're asking you to use a specific form, then use a specific form. If they're asking you, this is how we want our report to be done, first start with this, then end with this, that's what you want to do. Track your data throughout the project. Don't wait until the 2 days before report is needed to then say, hey, the case manager, you've been working with kids. How many kids did you serve? What is going on? And now you're fuzzled. And at the end, your report is not as robust as it needs to be. So track it throughout the project. Follow reporting guidelines. I don't know how much I can stress this. Follow reporting guidelines that has been given to you by the funder. Be honest and always meet deadlines. If they say we want our quarterly report by the last day of that quarter, 5 p.m., make sure you meet that deadline, because disregarding their deadlines is going to be a red flag for them. They may not necessarily say, give us back our money, but they may not give you money in the future. Because if they have to pull those reports out of you like they are pulling teeth, then you are not a good partner to work with. So they may, if other funds are available, they may not give that money to you because you don't meet deadlines or because you are not reporting following their guidelines. So it's very important that you follow the guidelines. Any questions on the 5 R's? Okay, the next one is how to apply for a grant. First, preparation is important. Preparation. You need to prepare. You can't just wake up one day and be like, I'm about to apply for a grant. You need to prepare. You need to put certain things in place before you even get into the program. So that part of the preparation is you looking at putting together what are known as common grant elements. Each grant has had these specific elements, not necessarily in that order, but in the order that I'm going to give to you, but that those elements are usually in at least 99% of the grants. And then I'm going to share some best practices on how to apply for grants. So what are these elements that we are talking about? So the nonprofit common grant elements include a cover sheet and table of contents. Executive summary, which is usually just 1 page. So page numbers are examples, but always go with what the instructions are saying. If they say they want a 2-page executive summary, then you give it to them. If they say we want a 1-paragraph executive summary, then that's what you give them. So you don't go and say, oh, Pastor T said 1 page. Pastor T is not part of the funder. So always follow the funder. What I'm giving you is what commonly is expected, but always go with the instructions of the grant that you're applying for. And then there's a statement of need. Usually this is also about 2 pages. And then the project description is usually 3 pages. The budget is usually 1 page. And then the organization information is usually 1 page. The sustainability plan is usually 1 page. And then the appendix and supporting materials. That is, sometimes they'll tell you no more than whatever you follow those instructions. But if there are no instructions, you give them as much information that you think will help, that you have not addressed in any of those other pages, that you think will help your organization. So what does a cover letter mean? What does the cover letter look like? So a cover sheet, sometimes the funder will provide it. They will provide you with the template for their cover sheet. Use that. If they have provided it, that's what they want, that's what you use. You don't go and recreate if they have given you a template. So if they have not given you a template and they are asking for a cover letter, then this is what your cover letter needs to look like. So it needs to be 1 sheet, and it usually goes between the top cover and like your table of contents and the actual proposal. So your cover letter is the first impression. So you need to take your time in drafting this particular letter. It's very important. 1 or 2 paragraphs. I mean, 1 to 3 paragraphs. And in that cover letter, you are addressing what it is that you're proposing. You are talking about the dollar amount. You're not saying what exactly each dollar is going to be used for. You're just saying, we are asking for $10,000 to do ABCD, right? To do an after-school program for our children. And then you also want to include in there why you believe you are a good fit to be funded this amount of money. The executive summary, on the other hand, is another one to really. So when you present your grant, most reviewers are going to look at 3 items. Most reviewers are going to look at 3 items first before they go into everything else. First, they are going to look at the cover letter. Your cover letter or your cover sheet, is it including the things that we asked you to include? If it doesn't, that's it. It goes on the pile. Maybe we'll look at this if we don't get we don't get other people who have listened to instruction. So your cover letter or your cover sheet, your executive summary, and your budget. Those are the first 3 things that they look at before they review what it is that you're offering, how are you going to do this, what your project proposal is. Those are the 3 items they first look at. So those need to be on point. So what does the executive summary it needs to be? It is also called an abstract or a project summary. It's usually the initial introduction to your organization or your business. It's a high-level condensed synopsis of your business plan, so to speak. So it represents the spirit of the project. It also sets the tone. It explains the need to be addressed, the organizational structure, and highlights leadership, financial need, and anticipated positive impact. It also includes your mission statement. It's also or your executive summary is also a sales speech and or an inspirational message, all in one. Your mission statement, sales speech, and inspirational message, all in one. So components. Now, writing an executive summary is a science. I mean, it really does require you more thinking into it, and because it's going to be one of the first documents that they look at, and some reviewers, that executive summary will determine whether or not they actually go through your whole proposal. So that's how important it is. So what are some of the elements, the components of an executive summary? The description of your product or service, the business or project objectives, the summary of the marketplace or your community, the qualifications of your executive leadership, expected growth, and funding needs, how much it is that you need. How much it is that you need. So some tips to consider when you're writing your executive summary. It needs to be an attention grabber. So even your first line needs to draw my attention. So it could be, so when I, let me see. So when I was writing a grant for the rural children, girls in my village who were missing school because they didn't have access to the sanitary pads. So I would say, imagine imagine missing 7 days of your school per month. Imagine trying to stop the bleeding with cow dung. Imagine your little girl having to miss 7 days of school because they cannot afford sanitary pads. That's what I'm asking you to help me to make sure every little girl in my village does not miss school because they don't have sanitary pads. Already somebody wants to know, what is cow dung? What? Somebody out there misses school, a little girl misses school 7 days a month. So right there already is telling someone that if somebody is missing at least 7 days a month, it means the teacher is not repeating what they taught when this child was not in school. It means this girl is always behind in school, in their education. They're always behind. And what kind of a future is it for that girl? So if you give me this $50,000, it means that I'm going to be able to help this child not miss school and hopefully have a better chance at a better life. So your executive summary can stand alone without the person going into the rest of your proposal. It can make them make a decision. That's how it needs to grab attention. It needs to follow the founder's guidance. It needs to be positive. And you also need to, when you are ending your last paragraph, your last line needs to be like a parting shot. Leave the biggest impression. Leave the biggest impression. With this $50,000, 300 schoolgirls will not miss an average of 7 days a week, 7 days a month of school. So your summary, your executive summary is a deal breaker. Just the executive summary is not written properly, that's it. It goes into the pile of maybe, maybe not. So what are the questions that the executive summary should answer? It should answer, what is your mission? Why is your mission important? What need does it fill? And what problem does it solve? What is the final goal or accomplishment you will achieve? Why are you the best suited to provide this service? How much will it cost? That's what it needs to address. Then the other element of your proposal is the statement of need. What do you want to address and why? You must include some supporting statistics, some anecdotes, and demonstrating the need. There is data for everything now, everywhere. Now there's data and study for everything out there. So there are focus groups, there are survey results that you can use. If you don't find data in your immediate community, use some focus groups, hold some focus groups. I have surveys distributed in your community, collect those surveys and put out the results out and get quotations from potential clients that are going to use your services. All those things are important. Use the most current available data and try to localize your data. Saying all of Mexico, the data is like this, but always bring it down to your village, to your small community. Clarity is key when it comes to writing your statement of need. Clarity is key. The next thing is the description of your project. This is the largest section of your proposal. Remember, I proposed these three pages, again following your the instructions of your entity. It's the largest proposal. It's the largest section of your proposal. It has specific activities and how they add value to those that you serve. It highlights previous successes, and it also includes lessons that are going to come out of it. It also includes goals and objectives. It includes your personnel. It includes your timeline. It's going to be this. It's going to start from here and it's going to end here. All your projects must have a beginning and an end for that time period. And also, how do you measure it? How are you going to measure this project and how are you going to evaluate that project? Have we heard of SMART goals, SMART acronym? Are we familiar with SMART, S-M-A-R-T acronym? Okay. So
yes, we are familiar.
Okay. What are they?
Specific, measurable, accurate, reliable, and time-bound.
That's right. That's right. So your goals and objectives must always be specific. They must always be measurable. They must be attainable. They must be realistic, and they must have a time frame. For example, so this is an example of a goal, if not a SMART goal. Our organization will help feed the hungry and homeless to make the world a better place. What's wrong with that? Thinking about the SMART, what is wrong with this? Our organization will help feed the hungry and homeless to make the world a better place.
It's not specific enough or measurable. Just the measurement and it's not specific enough.
Exactly.
Nor the
Exactly.
timeline.
Exactly. It's just it's a desire. It's but how are you measuring it? What's the timeline? So if you take that same goal and you want to do a smarter goal, you say feed our neighbors. That's the name of the organization. Feed Our Neighbors organization will distribute 350 meals daily in Albany, New York, to assist homeless mothers and children between January 1st, 2025 and December 31, 2025. In that goal, you have told us, number one, you have told us who you are. You have told us how many meals are going to be distributed and when. It's going to be 350 meals daily. You have also let us know where. It's in Albany, New York, and who is going to be assisted, homeless mothers and children. And you've also given us a timeline. 350 meals a day is realistic. And the timeline is January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025. That's a SMART goal. So your goals must be very, very specific. So budget. There are two types of budget that your organization has. It's going to be the organizational budget. That's the main budget. And then within the organizational budget is the project budget. So the project budget is a smaller, is a specific project versus the organizational budget. The organizational budget includes everything and any other. If you have several projects, you have other projects in there. But those always know that those are two different budgets. And when you submit your application, it should also have those two very distinct budgets. So what does the budget do? The budget demonstrates to the funder that you know what financial resources are needed to succeed. Let me try and make that bigger. Pay attention to what funders will fund versus what they won't fund. It's very important. They always write it out there. They always write it in their instructions. We will not fund this. They will sometimes give you, we will fund a certain percentage of salaries. And your budget must reflect that certain percentage. So if they say we will fund 50% of the executive director's salary, and you go in there and you ask for 60%, your budget, your proposal right there is not going to be looked at. You have talked yourself out of being considered for funding because you didn't listen to instruction. Is it an operating budget or is it a project or program budget? Your budget narrative, make sure that you explain every line. Non-profits are different from the corporate world. Non-profit, they want to know, they want a narrative line by line in your budget, line by line. Your budget must match your activities. Your budget must match your activities. And then the next element is, okay, someone raised their hands.
It's me,
Yes.
Pastor T. I just I put a note on the group that anybody who wanted to leave to remember we're recording this, and I will send it to anybody who's here. I note you have maybe about 12 more slides. Do you think, what's your estimate of time so just people know?
Okay, I can talk fast.
Okay. Oh, I remember
I can
before
talk
when we did
fast.
this,
Maybe by the time 12 o'clock hits, I'll be done.
okay, it's like a half an hour.
About half an hour, yes.
And I want Irene, God bless her. She's been doing sign language for this the whole time, and
Oh,
an hour and a
beautiful.
half, and it's got to be exhausting for her at this point. So,
Oh, okay,
so
okay.
Irene, if you want to take a break, please feel free to do that. I much appreciate what you're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so organization information, this is where you brag about your organization. So not all soup kitchens are created equal, right? So even while other organizations are doing similar work like you are doing, you are unique in your own way. What drove you to start your organization is not the same thing that drove the next soup kitchen, for example. So let them hear about your accomplishments, why you exist, things that you may not be covered anyway in the application. This is where you would put it on here. Give specific outcomes of what you do. Have you received any awards for this particular project or for your organization in general? What are those awards? And not without necessarily giving a whole slew explanation, just annually we received $10,000 from ABC organization for this, and then we received 10,000 from this organization for this. And then what are some of your key program partners? Who are they? Who are your collaborators? Sustainability plan. A lot of times people don't think about sustainability plan when they are writing their organization. Sometimes even the funders don't include it, but I want to encourage you to include it as part of your appendices, if you will, because it's important to let the funder know that we do have a plan for this organization. Now, if it's a one-time project, then it's different. But if you have an intention of this project continuing in your community, you want to have a sustainability plan. What is going to happen after these funds are done? Is it going to die with this with this fund, or are you going to continue, and how are you going to continue it? So the sustainability plan can be, you can write it as part of your project description, or it can be a standalone as one page. What do you want to talk about in the sustainability plan? You want to talk about where is the funding coming from? Strategic plan plays a big role when it comes to this. What are your fundraising plans? What are your fundraising streams? Remember I was talking about diversifying. This is where you start, where you shine, and talk about how you have diversified your income, your fundraising streams. And then what are some program expansion and plans and changes? Even if part of your sustainability plan is to say, as of next year, we are going to hire a grant writer. We are going to hire a development person. That's good, because you are showing you want this thing to last. You want somebody who is dedicated to finding us different funding streams. So what does your sustainability plan need to look like? Diversify. I don't know why my stuff is jumbled up. Okay, so diversified funding is important. Multi-year funding is also important if you are able to do that. Which of your funding sources are multi-year, and for how long? You want to mention that in your sustainability plan. You want to talk about any renewed funding that is coming up. So if your organization is renewing a certain funding, you want to talk about that. You want to talk about any of your annual or strategic planning that you might that your board has come up with, and also the development capacity. What is the plan for increasing the grants that you are applying for this year versus last year, for example? So in your appendices and supporting documents, the additional information that adds value to your proposal. Don't just add things just to add things, but some of the things that will add value. Letters of support. Maybe these letters are coming from the community that you're going to serve. Maybe these letters are coming from individuals that you are collaborating with, that you are partnering with, who are providing a specific service that you don't provide, but you know that your clients are going to need. So you've come to an agreement of this is what is going to happen. Testimonials of individuals who have utilized your services and they're providing you with testimonials. Also proof of your legal status, your 501c3 determination letter if you are in the US, your PVO if you are in somewhere in Africa, and articles of incorporation and certifications within from your country. Financial statements if you have any, list of other funders, and maybe a short PowerPoint presentation that highlights your activities that have happened in your organization. A rule of thumb, give funders what they have asked for. Give funders what they have asked for. Make sure that your proposal is well thought out, and by doing that, you will increase your chances of getting funded. What are some best practices to consider? Double and triple check the requirements of the funder. What is the maximum number of pages per section or for the entire proposal? They always give you these things, these very specific instructions. Make sure that your page numbering makes sense. You know, sometimes when you get your CFO is the one that worked on the budget piece, and now they are giving to you, who is going to put all the whole proposal. You're going to submit the whole proposal together. If there is a page numbering that is required, make sure that they are numbered effectively. Be clear on who you are sending the grant to and when. So instructions are going to be in there. If they are saying send the grant to grants at entity.com, you then, even though you have your cousin who works there, you then send your grant proposal to that cousin's email instead of the email that they just gave you. That is not going to, that will disqualify you immediately. Also look to see if the funder has specified specific font in your writing. Have they specified specific margins, or if they ask you to put some headers and footers, make sure if they have given that, it's important to them, so make it important. There is nothing the funder is asking you that you can say, oh, this is not that important. If they put it in, it's important to them, so you have to respect that. Some more best practices: develop a grant writing game plan way before you need to write a grant. Use a team approach in grant writing. So in your organization, and I know that sometimes we are limited in who works in our organizations because of limited resources. So you might have maybe 2 or 3 members, but make sure that everyone is included. But when you actually submit the grant, it needs to sound like it has been written by one person. Very, very important. Don't take what John has written and Paul has written, and then you just kind of copy and paste, and what you have written, and then copy and paste. The whole story that you're telling needs to sound like it's being told by one voice. So read everything before you write anything. Read everything before you write anything. Read all the instructions before you write anything. Include an evaluation in grant proposal. Use pictures, charts, and graphics if they are permitted. Provide relevant, up-to-date information and data. Give the funder 100% of what they have requested. Give them all that they have requested. Does the funder want multiple copies of the proposal or narrative and budget, but only one copy of the list of additional funders sent to a specific person? pay attention to that. If the funder does not accept a common grant application form, have you provided all of the information that has been asked for? Because sometimes they don't give you a form, like remember when we're talking about the cover sheet or the cover letter, if they don't provide you a specific template, but they will tell you this is what we want included in the cover sheet, then include that. Make it easy for your reviewer to find the information.
I'm just going off to get a few things. Is there anything you want in Metro or anything?
Pardon? Oh, okay. Use headers that correspond to each item that has been requested. Ignorance is no defense. Instructions that are being given by an organization are not window dressing. Pay attention to the eligibility criteria and pay attention to the areas of interest or focus of this particular grantor, and also pay attention to your budget. Make sure your budget makes sense. So lastly, I want us to look at eligibility by looking at 3 types of grants that some of you can actually apply for right now that I looked up. So and then I'm going to end my discussion. So let's start with this. So the NEAR Foundation has some grants that you can look up and apply for. But what I really want for us to pay attention to is the eligibility criteria. So they have different grants. So they have a Global Learning Fellowship, and then they have an Envision Equity grant, and then Learning and Leadership grants, Student Success grants, and then so let me just pick one. Pick one, or maybe let me go into the projects. Let's see. Let me look at the Community Schools Initiative. So with the Community Schools Initiative, it gives you who they are, what they are all about, and then they give you what they have done so far, what the money is being used for, and then I want us to focus on the eligibility criteria. What are the grants for? So it says, we know that those who create community schools often have a difficulty in obtaining funding to support quality planning, a critical first step in building community schools. Planning partners need time and support to begin to reimagine together what a quality public education should entail. Planning teams need time and resources that enable them to develop an authentic shared vision and roadmap for moving forward. The Foundation's Community Schools Planning Grant recipients will be able to use Foundation funds to further develop their partnerships, engage a large number of stakeholders, identify the needs and interests of all stakeholders, determine what local capacities exist or need to be developed to support their community schools. Create a community schools work plan and develop a school implementation budget. The process generally takes from 6 to 12 months. So just from reading this, one of the things that you get out of this is that they are funding community schools, community-based schools. So if you are some kind of a private school somewhere in the boons, not in a community, you don't qualify. You're not eligible for this particular grant. Let me see if they have a specific. Let me go and say apply. So this one is giving you so it gives you the application time period. It's giving you it starts March 1st, 2025 to May 1st, 2025. So if you meet the criteria for this is a good time for you to be applying for this particular grant. So it says we invite applications from educators. So if you're not an educator, you don't qualify. So leave it alone. As that are specialized instructional support personnel and education support professionals to develop so they're giving you what they are developing. So who qualifies? Who qualifies? Application guidelines. It's very important to go through the application guidelines. What is it? What are they expecting of you? When they are talking about something that you are not familiar with, chances are you don't qualify. Leave it alone. Find another one. So you see with this one, so here's the selection proposals. Goals for student learning and growth are challenging and rigorous. So if your proposal is not challenging or rigorous, then you don't qualify. Proposed work engages students in critical thinking and problem solving, mastery of essential academic content, strengthening communication and collaboration skills, or project-based and learning experiences connected to real-world issues and challenges. There is alignment between goals, assessment, and activities and budget. The project is collaborative and can be sustained in future years and adopted by other educators. The project addresses educational equity and opportunity gaps. So you already know what it is that this grant needs to do. If that's not what you're going to do, then you don't qualify. Now let's look at another one. Polio. This one is from the Rotary. So Rotary has what they call global grants. So they tell us what it is. It's global grants can fund humanitarian projects, scholarships for graduate level academic studies, vocational training teams, which are groups of professionals who travel abroad either to teach local professionals about their field or to learn more about it themselves. So for you, it would be, you would go under humanitarian projects. So what qualifications? Both the district or club in the country where the activity is carried out and international partner district or club must first become qualified before applying for a global grant. You must learn more about the qualification process and the grant management. Your club and district Rotary Foundation chairs can help you plan how to use your district designated funds and learn how to qualify your club. So as an individual, you can't just go for the global grants for Rotary Club. They have an expectation of partnerships between the district or a club in the country where the activity is going to happen, as well as a district and a club from the an international partner. So if you don't have those partnerships, find those partnerships in order for you to qualify to apply for the Rotary grant. And the last one I want to share with, if I can get this page is not always this page is not always available for some reason, but it is the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. Let me see. They also have corporate responsibility partnerships. You can reach out and find out if you qualify for that. They also have a matching gift and volunteer grants. They also have grants, I believe, for wheelchairs. They have grants for wheelchairs. So I will send these links in the interest of time. I will send these links for you to go through them and see if you can find one where you qualify, but make sure you pay attention to the eligibility criteria. It's very, very important. It's very important. Okay, any questions?
Oh, wow, Pastor T. Wow. Thank you.
I know it's a lot of information to take in.
It's recorded, but and so people will have opportunity to go back and look at it again. And we did do the AI transcription summary, so they'll have an opportunity to see that also. But wow, always wow me.
Oh, so I'm so sorry for that. I'm so sorry. Let me just go back a little bit for a quick minute because I forgot to address one very important thing, which is the eligibility, how to what are AI in grant writing, the role of AI in grant writing. Let me just go back real quickly, please. My sincerest apologies. You know what? I'll send you the slides. I'll send you the slides. For some reason, my computer is stuck. I'll send you the slides.
Pastor T, do you still offer your courses?
Yes, I
know
do.
you have like a 3-day course or something like that.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
They can get in touch with me through WhatsApp is my best communication. And my number is 914 +1 914 618 8800 +1.
I'll share that with the group.
Yeah.
I have one question. So for example, hire a grant writer, they're costly. And they should be. Their skill that they have is worth the weight in gold. Can you include the grant writer's fee in the grant proposal?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
Unfortunately, no. Because you are asking for funds for the future, and the grant writer is actually doing it. Is doing their work prior to the grant getting. That's one thing. But from an ethical perspective, we don't get, nobody funds a grant writer in that respect. However, having said that, there are remember the unrestricted funding. If your unrestricted funding, if you within your organization has a development person, some unrestricted funds can take care of that if they are a development person, not specific, because a development person is doing more than just writing a grant. So they are actually part of the staff members. But if you are asking for money to pay just a standalone grant writer, no, we don't get paid on commission. No, do we get paid after you have reached? We get paid for the work that we have done.
Okay.
It's like the lawyer, right? The lawyer, when you pay the lawyer, when you get to court, whether you're guilty or not, it's still going to be, the lawyer has still done their job. So if you think of it in that regards.
Right.
Mhm.
Dr. Mata has a question.
Teresa, thank you for your presentation. I have one question. Where and how do we look for grants? I mean, the very, very first step. Let's say Google. What do we write in Google? For example, my need is to pay for a service, psychological support, or physical therapy education for my support group of polio survivors in Mexico.
Okay.
Very, very first step, please.
Okay. So Google is not always the best. Why do I say that? Because when you type in Google, so you want to have specific phrases or specific words in order for you to get something to get something out of Google, right? So you need to think about specific terminology that you put on Google. But Google does not, when it brings you, let's say you are saying, we want I'm looking for grants for wheelchairs, for example, for providing wheelchairs, or for providing psychological services. You are going to get a whole lot of grants, but those grants are either passed, or it's somebody who has done those grants and they are giving a report. So you're going to get a plethora of information that is basically useless to you. So the best is to, if you can, is to subscribe to grant databases. There are a lot of grant databases out there that you can subscribe to. Sometimes they run specials where you're only paying $99, or you're paying, some of them can be up to $500. So when you subscribe to that, to those entities, you then can put in your criteria, and they'll bring out the grants that are currently available. But there is an extra funding with it. I stopped because I didn't see if it was really helping people. I subscribe to at least 3 databases myself. So I would write, if people can come to me and say, hey, I'm looking for a grant to do XYZ, I will put in that criteria, and then I'll share that grant at no cost to you, because I'm already paying for it. I'm not charging people for providing that grant. But I didn't get enough feedback from people to know whether it was really being helpful. I was posting at least 30 grants per week on WhatsApp, but I didn't get the sense that it was helpful. So I just stopped. I haven't, I think I have not posted, Ken, I don't know, I haven't posted in that group for maybe 2 quarters, maybe, I can't remember, but I have not posted significant, because again, I didn't know if it was being really useful. There are about almost 1,000 people in that group, but I didn't get a sense that the grants, that either, if I'm putting the grants, are people even applying for them, right? Or am I just putting them out there and nobody's really following through and applying for those grants? So I just figured maybe I'm exerting energy in the wrong place.
Capacity, there is a question here in the chat.
But sorry, Doc, I can send you some lists of some of those databases if you want to look into them and see if you can subscribe to them. And so I'll give you maybe 2 or 3 that I can recommend that are not as costly to do that.
Yes,
and
please
see
do
if you can take it from
Yeah.
there.
We have a club member, Nafisatu, from Cameroon. And she put a question. I don't know if this is a long answer or not, but she said, what are some of the most common mistakes one should avoid when writing a grant?
The first one really is, most people do not read instruction. They do not read the instructions that the grantor is giving. So they make an assumption that I already know what they want. I've done this grant before. I already know what they want, right? So that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make. The other mistake is that they pick and choose what they are going to submit to the funder. They pick and choose instead of providing all the information that is needed. They pick and choose. Another mistake is that the goals that they state in their project description, their goals are vague, that they are not measurable. Another mistake people make is on the budget, that the budget does not add up. Like mathematically, it just does not add up. Just that simple. And sometimes people are like, so we could correct it and all that. But no, first cut is the deepest, all right? The first cut is the deepest. First impressions are important. So if your budget does not add up mathematically to start with, or if your budget seems unrealistic, what you are proposing, you have never, so for example, if you've never received a budget before and you want to start with receiving a $200,000 budget, you want to run a program of $200 budget with a $200 budget, $200,000 budget. You've never done any program that was $1,000. Or even $5,000, you go straight to the big money. They see through it. It's unrealistic. What is your track record? So sometimes people look down on the smaller grants with, I want more money. But those smaller grants will make a difference when you are applying for bigger grants. For those of you who are believers, you know that in the Word of God, there is a verse that says, be faithful in small things and I'll make you Lord over much. You can't be trusted with $500 if you have not been faithful with $5. Pardon me, with $5. That's just how the mathematics works, okay? And then also ignoring the funder's instructions and priorities. You giving the funders the priorities when they are telling you, these are our priorities, you ignore them. And also submitting sloppy proposals that are filled with typos or even formatting mistakes. I mean, the funder is telling you, I need 1 inch margin all round, and you ignore that. They tell you we want it to be times New Roman times, numeral time, what is that font? They give you a specific font, and you ignore it. They give you a specific font size, you ignore it. That is the quickest way of it. Remember, the funders are receiving, whenever you see a grant being advertised, you must always assume that they are receiving hundreds of applications. So from the very beginning, the first thing they are going to see is they are going to look at is, did this person listen to instructions? Did they give us a cover sheet? They didn't. Okay, one over that pile, never to be looked at. Did they give us a comprehensive budget that makes sense? No, math is not adding. Already they put it aside. So they have a way of, these I'm not even going to look at. Because if you can't listen to the initial instructions, how are we going to work together for the next year or next 2 years of the duration of this grant? Because whatever we're going to ask, chances are you're not going to give to us, or you're going to make things up. Right? So yeah, how you present it must be how they've asked you to present it. If they say use our platform and you decide I'm going to print it and complete it and then email it, guess what? They are not going, it's already disqualified. So not following the funder's instruction is a big one, is a big mistake.
John from Ireland, he has his hand up.
Hi,
Hello.
John from Ireland.
Hi, Pastor. The quickest and most common mistake I found sitting as an evaluator for the European Commission projects was people don't read what they write.
Right.
In other words, when you've written it out, when you do your application, sit down and read it. Then when you've read it, read it again. Then leave it for 48 hours and read it again. And it's amazing what you can pick up. And do not try, and the other quick one we found right the way through, do not try to read your application on screen, because most people cannot actually spot errors on screen. You print it out, all right, maybe a waste of paper, but you print it out, you go through it line by line, and when you've got the printed version, give it to somebody else to read and see if it makes sense. Because if it doesn't make sense to them, it's not going to make sense to the evaluator at the other end. Yes, your point well taken about follow the instructions, do that. And the other thing that happens in a lot of cases is that when you've got your executive summary or the first part that they look for, make sure you get it in there and you punch it in there, because when you go through with some of the large project funders, such as the EU Commission and various other people like that, they are receiving thousands of applications, and unless it grabs them right from the first page, forget it. You've got to grab their attention right from the outset.
Absolutely, absolutely. Proofreading, don't take it for granted. Absolutely needed. Absolutely needed. Thank you so much, John.
Are there any other questions? Okay, looks like you did a good job.
Oh, praise God.
When there's no questions, it tells me you
God.
did a good job. Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, maybe afterwards you might be thinking about it, and then you have a question. By all means, feel free to send them to me via via WhatsApp or via Ken. I'll be happy to answer. Do you guys have a WhatsApp group?
Yes, we do.
As a group?
Yes, we do.
Feel free to add me in there if you want.
Okay.
And I won't pay much attention to anything else other than the things to do with funding. But I will be happy to answer any questions in there so that everybody has the same answer at the same time. And I can also post some of the things that I might think might be helpful to you.
Okay.
I used to take like quarterly payments of if you wanted a personal if you wanted me to look for grants for you specifically. I used to do that, but again, I found that even while you are paying me this small fee, still people were not going for those grants, right? So I'll send you, so these are every month I'll give you 3 grants and say, so these are the 3 grants that you qualify for, because I would have gone to customize what you really want, and I'll send you. And I still find that people don't apply for the grants. So I don't know whether it's a question of being intimidated about writing the grant, or just being overwhelmed, or not having enough time, whatever the case is. So when you write your grant, I also offer services of once you've written your grant, if you want me to review it for you, I can review it for you.
Much appreciate that.
Submit it, or if you want like to do it as spurs, right? So I've written my summary. Can you please look at it? And I will look at it. I've written my description, my project description. Can you please look at it? And I'll look at it. So that requires you telling me which grant and sending me the link of whatever grant you're applying for, so I can read on it to make sure that you're answering what they have asked. So if that's a service that you are interested in, by all means, we can talk about that as well.
Much appreciate that.
Yes.
One question, I saw the Ford Foundation was putting aside a lot of money for disability matters. Have you had experience with them? I mean, they're big. Everybody must apply to them. It must
Who
be
is
hard.
that?
Ford, the Ford Foundation.
Yes, the Ford Foundation, absolutely. Yes. They are, number one, I find them very easy to work with. Once you meet the criteria, not that they give everyone, but if you put your program, your good foot forward and do everything that they are asking you to do, they will. They are a good entity to work with once you get in. And sometimes don't go there looking for a lot of money. Just go in there looking for, because what you want is the in. What you want is, I just need $500. This is what I'm going to do with this $500. And then you do the $500, you give them the report. Now you have a relationship. So when you go for the bigger money, they know that you were faithful with that $500 that they gave you earlier. So the idea is not to go for these big organizations like Ford Foundation, Bill Gates Foundation. The trick is not to go for their big funding. If you have not applied for grants before, that's not what you want to do. You want to go for smaller amounts and choose your projects effectively. Maybe with God giving us grace, perhaps I can come back and help out specifically if you guys tell me what you guys are doing, and specifically talk about how to choose a project and get it funded.